Hey retro gamers. Today on Smashing Bricks, it's 2001 and we've crash landed on a strange and mysterious planet and caught COVID JXBB whatever in Pikmin for the Nintendo GameCube. Hey, welcome back to Smashing Bricks, a retro gaming podcast. This is episode 31. My name is Eddie Inzauto, and today I'm joined by Mason from Game Boys in the Wild. How's it going, Mason? Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Been excited to come on, and I'm doing great today.
Awesome. So we're not talking about your forte of Game Boy and that sort of handheld realm, but we are going to be jumping into a Nintendo platform, which is, the majority of Game Boys are Nintendo platforms, besides all the special fancy ones that you always show on your Instagram. But yeah, tell us what you're all about, because I found you on Instagram and I was like, this is so cool.
What I do now, I'm just a hobby page. This isn't my job or anything, but it's just an amalgamation really of everything that I enjoy. And I've always liked to tinker with things, like to fix things. And so finding broken Game Boys was really exciting for me. And then I'm into photography, into just like kind of connecting with other people who are interested in cool retro things, video gaming history, whatever that might be. And so having an Instagram account to showcase that and to connect with other people on that it's just kind of snowballed from there, and just trying to push, myself to learn how to take better pictures, build cooler Game Boys, and just whatever's interesting to me, really.
Very cool. It's interesting to me too. And speaking of photography, we can talk a lot more about that off the air, because I'm huge into photography myself. But
Awesome.
To get to know you a little bit more, something that I've done with first-time guests in the past is ask a few quick questions before we get into the meat of the episode. So are you ready to answer like just a couple about your gaming preferences and history?
So ready. And I think it's important to get some of this history out of the way for the conversation we're going to have.
Yeah. Yeah, so we know where you're coming from. I guess the first one is a good one. When did you actually start gaming? Like what age, what time, what kind of console generation? What was your first platform? All that sort of stuff. Or just answer it however you feel is appropriate.
Yeah, so I remember the first game I ever saw, the first time I saw a video game was Super Mario Brothers 3. And it was my cousin, and it was my cousins were playing it. And I was like, what is that? But I thought it was super cool, became super enamored with that. But I didn't get a lot of playtime with that. It wasn't until I was probably 6 or 7 years old. We got a Nintendo 64 for Christmas. And now this was probably the early 2000s. That it was winter 2003. Actually, that I got a Nintendo 64. So I'm in my late 20s
like
now.
Literally on the clearance rack.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like the GameCube had come out, PlayStation 2 was going strong. And all I wanted was a Nintendo 64 because I had seen Super Smash Brothers on the Nintendo 64. I was like, this is what I want. And I'd never had a gaming console before. My parents weren't super into giving us that necessarily, but they relented and gave us a Nintendo 64. So that was when I started, was probably around 6 or 7 years old, early 2000s, playing N64, and then shortly thereafter graduated to a GameCube, and just have, kept up with it relatively steadily since then. But I've always been a pretty casual gamer, to be honest.
Okay. I love that you wanted the Nintendo 64, even though it was like well past its time.
Yeah.
That's I love that because I love the Nintendo 64. We're actually going to talk about Nintendo consoles on this month's bonus round episode. So listeners, check that out in about 14 days. Okay, next question, and this will be fun. What is your favorite console generation?
Oh, sixth gen, no question. It's the generation we're going to talk about. GameCube, PS2, Xbox, Dreamcast. That for
Mm-hmm.
me is just, I mean, that's what I grew up with, right? Ages, however,
Mm,
8 through 10 or so. I really love the GameCube. That's definitely my childhood console. And I think that all other, I was a big Nintendo kid, but, Sony, Microsoft, all of them are just firing on all cylinders. And so I feel like that's just an exciting time with some really bad licensed games as
nice.
well.
Yes, definitely. Do you have a favorite game genre?
That's a hard one, man, but I like adventure games. A la
Okay.
Zelda, Souls games,
So action
action
adventure.
adventure. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I mean, that's a great genre. My favorite games are Souls games
Yeah.
and
Well,
probably
we have
Zelda
that in
games
common.
too. Yeah. Do you have a favorite developer and or publisher?
I mean, Nintendo is the big one. For me, just been a constant
Mm,
throughout my life. Those were the games that I played with my. I've got three younger brothers, a younger sister, so very family friendly, and we could all play them together. But as I've gotten older, I've just loved eating up everything I could get my hands on from FromSoft, and I think that they're
yes.
definitely the best game developers working right now, in my opinion. Them and Nintendo are
Oh,
probably the
hell yeah.
two best, and Nintendo is obviously a publisher as well. So that's what I would say between those two,
Right.
for totally different reasons.
Very cool. Very cool. And last one is, do you have a favorite game of all time? Single game of all time.
Favorite game of all time is The Legend of Zelda: Wind Waker. That's the one for me.
Ooh, Wind Waker
Yep.
on your GameCube of your childhood. I like it. I
Yep.
like it.
And that was the first Zelda game. I played that one actually before Ocarina of Time. Still love Ocarina of Time, but for me, it's just Wind Waker just hits, and man, I'm still enthralled.
Nice. Very cool. All right. Well, that's Mason. That was very illuminating. And now we're going to jump into something on your favorite console. But actually, I want to mention something. I said something about COVID, and it's because I have COVID right now. So, listeners, please forgive me if my normally chill vibes are even more sedated. And also forgive me if I leave some of my tea drinking sounds in the recording, because I just have to. I'm working hard for you here, people, fighting through it. And Mason, you'll forgive any brain fog I have throughout this show.
Hey, it's all right.
I
We'll help
hope.
each other, man. We got it.
Nice, nice. So okay, so we're talking about Pikmin today on the Nintendo GameCube, which was one of the earliest titles on the GameCube in 2001, the year the GameCube came out. So, how would you describe Pikmin as sort of a general overview of what the game is? I know it's kind of a unique thing, but what would you say?
It's so unique. As I've thought about how to describe Pikmin, it's like it's equal parts real time strategy with some survival horror elements, with some
Oh,
cozy game. It's
yeah.
just an amalgamation of so many things, but I think at its core it is just Miyamoto's take on real time strategy.
Yeah, definitely a different look. It's a boots on the ground take is what I
Hmm.
came up with today because you're playing from the perspective of a character in the midst of your units, having to directly command them by running over to them and collecting them and pointing them in the direction. Sometimes literally throwing them, actually
Yeah.
incredibly frequently, literally throwing your units at the enemy. And that makes it more action oriented, and it's also very puzzle oriented, I would say, in different places, like environmental puzzles based on the abilities of your three different types of Pikmin and more different types of Pikmin in later sequels, which we can maybe get into or maybe not, depending on our experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a Miyamoto joint,
Hmm.
essentially. It's, it's the mad creator, the happy creator, and his special take on literally anything and everything he decides to touch.
Yeah.
So what's your prior relationship with the game? Did you play it back in the day, or when did you first play it, or is this your first time playing it?
Yeah. So this is my first time actually playing Pikmin. And I remember, when we talked a
Hmm.
few months ago about what we want to do, I told you like, hey, we can do a game I've done before, but here's a list of games that are on my backlog. And, we decided on
Ah.
Pikmin. And so this was new for me, which I thought was kind of interesting just to like see, because, obviously Pikmin 4 came out last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I only heard great things about it. I heard people praising it, saying it was amazing, and I wanted to get Pikmin. I picked up the 1+2 pack for the Switch and was planning on playing it. But really, the first time I ever knew Pikmin was even a thing was Super Smash Bros. I'm like, who is this guy who throws flowers? Just confusion. And then obviously, as I've I guess matured a little bit, I became more aware of Pikmin and more interested in it. And so, yeah,
Like,
here
oh,
we
this
are.
refined game.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool, man. Did you play? So you played you played it on Switch, obviously, because you had the
Yes.
1+2 on Switch. Did you play 2 also in the
So
interim?
I actually like dabbled a little bit in all four of them just to get a feel. And I've like gotten a grasp of like what makes
Oh,
each
that's
of them
incredible.
different. But I've only played the first one. Like if you were to ask me details on any of the others, I'd be like, I'd be pretty shaky.
Well, okay, but still, that'll be interesting when we get into the gameplay experience later.
Yeah.
So as for me, I played Pikmin at release, like probably the day it came out,
Wow.
because the GameCube didn't have a ton of games when it first came out in
No.
2001 in North America. I wrote this down. There were 12 games released at launch in the United States. Then there were 3 more before the end of November. And then on December 3rd in North America, Pikmin and Super Smash Bros. Melee were released on the same day, which is incredible and also relevant to your experience with Super Smash Bros.,
Yeah.
which I think is funny. So it was essentially the 16th game released on the system, and a lot of the ones that came out on launch day I wasn't very interested in. I may have bought Luigi's Mansion, but I'm not sure. I know I played it, but
Yeah.
it was also over in like 2 hours.
Yeah. It's
It's a
short
super
game.
short game. And I may have had Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3, which was a
Mm.
launch title for the GameCube. And Tony Hawk, those were great games, especially when I was younger, and the music, oh, it was just great. Anyway, so Pikmin was one of my first real GameCube games, and I remember thoroughly enjoying it and being impressed by the unique design and imaginative concept from a person who I could only describe as a genius my entire life. I
Yeah.
mean, I could describe him as so many more things, but man. And this became the new Nintendo franchise at the time. It was like, oh, this is the new Nintendo thing. Like we had Mario and Donkey Kong and Zelda and Metroid. This was like in that group to me based on like how it was released and how it was presented. And now I guess there are 4 of them. So it's kind of falling in line with, oh, this is a perennial franchise for Nintendo. It remains. And I guess we'll get to that a little bit later too. So that was my experience. I played it, loved it, played through it a few times, I think. And then I remember playing 2. I don't know if I finished 2 back in the day. And that was it. I didn't play the other ones. I don't even know what console Pikmin 3 was released on, to be perfectly honest with
Well,
you.
you'd be forgiven. It
Um,
released on the Wii U, so pretty forgettable.
yeah, that's kind of what I guessed. Honestly, I was like, it was probably the Wii U if I
Yeah.
have no recollection of it. but the Wii U. Huh. Okay, so the history of the game, as I said, it was released in 2001. In Japan, it was October 26th. In North America, it was December 3rd. In PAL regions, it was June 14th of the next year, 2002, which I typoed in my notes here. Developed by Nintendo EAD, which was originally R&D4, aka the Miyamoto Squad, which just recently had incorporated Satoru Iwata at the time. Produced by Miyamoto, as opposed to it being directed by him hands-on, sort of. Because he was now on the board of directors at Nintendo and was overseeing literally everything. So it had the directors Shigefumi Hino and Masamichi Abe. Abe having worked on 1080 Snowboarding, a fun game for the Nintendo 64 that I really enjoyed playing. Yeah. And Pikmin, I just learned this literally today. The main programmer of Pikmin was the programmer of 1080 Snowboarding, Colin Reed, which was amazing to learn. Two very similar games. Not actually.
Yeah.
It's funny.
There might be some
when people
DNA
move from one project to another. Yeah. And the game was scored, like the music was composed by Hajime Wakai, who was one of two composers for Star Fox 64, which is also a cool thing to realize.
Yeah.
Especially because I really kind of like the music for Pikmin and Star Fox 64.
Both of those have really, really good soundtracks.
Yeah. And they have like a very particular vibe to them, like they have a character all their own.
Yeah.
So it's got a really unified soundtrack, I'd say, which we'll talk more about, I suppose. This grew out of the tech demo, written demon here in my notes, Super Mario 128, which was shown at Space World 2000, where 128 Marios were dropped onto a platform and running around to show the power of the 100, quote unquote, 128-bit hardware, the GameCube, which, spoiler alert, there's no such thing as 128-bit. And later on in 2007, Miyamoto even said, most of you have already played Super Mario 128, but you played it in a game called Pikmin. And it was like, oh, wow, that makes total sense. My 100 Pikmin that I can carry around with me. It's funny that was like exactly the number 128, and then the limit on your Pikmin is 100.
Well, it's also deceiving because, you're coming off of your last big 3D Mario title was Super Mario 64. And so I remember watching videos about that and being like, when is 128 coming? Is it Mario Galaxy? What is it? And it was just a tech demo, but I do recall that causing a little bit of a stir.
Yeah. And Galaxy came out in 2007?
Yeah.
So maybe we don't have like the full interview or where it came from. I just have that quote, but he was probably talking about Super Mario Galaxy, and probably someone asked him, so is this Super Mario 128?
Yeah.
And then he responded with that. That's my guess. I don't know for sure.
Well, to my understanding, that's correct, because if you look at that Mario 128 demo, it's all the Marios are running around on this sphere, and it looks like Super Mario Galaxy a little bit. Obviously, there's not 128 Marios in that game, but just like the gravity mechanics, people were like, is this it? Is this what you've been working on? Your magnum opus, after kind of the lukewarm reception of Mario Sunshine. He's like, it definitely has some ideas there that were implemented in Galaxy for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So he pulled the massive number of on-screen characters, and that went to Pikmin, and the gravity thing went to Galaxy later on. That's cool seeing where those different ideas stem from. Interestingly, Pikmin was developed on Microsoft Windows, and apparently a Windows version of the game with debugging features is hidden on the GameCube version's disc. What? My mind is literally blown.
That's crazy.
Are you kidding me? A Nintendo game, a Windows version of a Nintendo GameCube game on the actual disc. That's crazy. I love stuff like that. That's so cool.
Yeah.
They did have some trouble figuring out which direction to go with this, probably because it spawned from this tech demo. And the director, Hino, said, I clearly recall the first time I saw multiple Pikmin working together to carry a big opponent. Until then, we'd been struggling to find the direction that this game should have. But when these carry actions were completed, we were able to determine the future of Pikmin. So I guess they were just throwing things at the wall and then adding this carry mechanic. They were, oh yeah, we should make them carry them back, and then yeah, they could. Oh, maybe they can sprout new. So I can only imagine the conversations when they were brainstorming this design. It would be fun to be a fly on the wall in those kind of talks and brainstorming sessions.
Yeah, absolutely. So many. You think about that with a lot of games, actually. It's like, just what was it like to be in the room where this decision was made, for good or bad? You know, you play some games, you're like, how did they decide to make this terrible decision? But then there's others where it's like, how did they come up with how this worked? Or, you know, just the groundbreaking things that Nintendo tends to do. It's interesting to get a peek into that a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. For good or for bad too. Yeah. Like they've done a lot of really bad things.
I just think of
like
Star Fox Zero. If you've ever played that game, it's like, what were they thinking? Butchered my boy.
I don't know, man. Oh, what have they done? Ports and remakes. We got a Wii remake in 2008/2009, depending on region, and then, as you said, on the Switch in 2023, paired with number 2 with Pikmin 2. Sales, I don't have like the greatest sales numbers, but as of 2009, Pikmin had sold at least 1.2-ish million copies worldwide, which is not a insane number. That's not like a lot.
It's not Nintendo numbers. Any other studio would be happy with that, but not Nintendo.
Yeah, I mean, that's like a great number for the NES.
Yeah.
Right? Like, yeah. For like Zelda 2 sold 2 million copies, or not Zelda 2, Zelda sold 2 million copies, and they were like, whoa, yeah, that's insane, bro. You know, there's like a lot. But now we're selling millions in the first week. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I think there's kind of a cult fan base for Pikmin, though.
Yeah.
And it's always been rated pretty well.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because Pikmin 4 has sold 3.5 million copies. So
already,
yes, already, and it's been out for over. It's been out for over a year. I think it came out last June, so it's just about a year anniversary. Mm-hmm. And part of that is probably just the Switch. You know, it just has such a large install base, but it's also popular. Considered, at least as far as I'm able to tell, it's considered to be like, finally Pikmin's breaking through. You know, after 4 entries, it's becoming less niche. But even then, it still is pretty. Yeah, I'll get to my opinions on it. I guess I'll hold off.
Yeah. All right. Last thing before we get to our opinions is just some of the reception around that time that it was released. It has a Metacritic aggregate score of 89% on the GameCube, only 77% on the Wii, but it's the Wii, so I understand that. I'm not a huge fan of the Wii. And I've been giving a lot of foreshadowing to our bonus round episode with all these mentions of different Nintendo consoles. Other review scores, it got a 34 out of 40 from Famitsu, great. 9.25 out of 10 from Game Informer, rest in peace, as a few days ago, I'm sorry. 5 out of 5 from GamePro, 8.9 out of 10 from GameSpot, 9.1 out of 10 from IGN, 4 out of 5 stars from Next Gen, and 9 out of 10 from Nintendo Life. It won the best puzzle/trivia/parlor game E3 2001 from the Game Critics Awards, the Interactivity Award of 2002 from BAFTA, and Outstanding Innovation in Console Gaming in 2002 from the AIAS Awards. So super well received then, and kind of in perpetuity. That's what they think. But what do we think?
Yeah,
Because we played it. We played it.
I did play it.
So, for our retro replay experience, we played Pikmin 1 and some of Pikmin 2, 3, and 4 in your case. But how far did you get in Pikmin 1? Did you complete it?
I rolled the credits in Pikmin 1,
Hmm.
but I felt like I feel like I need to play this game a few more times.
Yeah, right? It's the kind of game where you can go through it once, finish it at whatever degree of completion you managed, and then go back with that knowledge and try to do it better. It's like the entire game is a run-based game. It's just like a drawn-out, extended run
Yeah.
where you learn a little bit about what the tricks are, where to go, because it's timed, right? Every
Yeah.
day, it's laid out in days. I bet you explain it. You're probably better at it.
Well, no, I doubt it, but it is. You go and basically you crash land on this planet, and it tells you right at the beginning, you got 30 days, and then you're gonna die,
Mhm.
basically. And it does it in the most Nintendo way possible. I'm pretty sure it's like, and if I don't make it, if I don't get all the parts to my ship, if I don't rebuild my ship in 30 days, then dot, 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 I don't want to think about what will happen. It's like implied,
Yeah.
and it's interesting because as you go through, you're using these little Pikmin basically to help you rebuild your ship. And every
Hmm.
day, the countdown is like, okay, there's only 10 days left, 9 days left. And if you don't have enough parts, then, there's a bad ending to the game. And based on how far you get different endings. And for me, when I think about 2001 games, the type of games I was playing in 2001, that is awesome that you can have
Yeah.
different endings and stressful. And that's what I've heard so much about Pikmin 1 is just it's stressful for people and for a lot of reasons.
Yeah. I would say that it's a little stressful. I hate,
Yeah.
not that I hate, maybe I love it. It makes me feel something when I'm getting to the end of the day and I'm trying to accomplish this one last task and I have the realization that I'm not going to do this. Like you just,
Yeah.
everything that I did today, it's not going to get me that part. Like you might even have one of these parts that requires anywhere from 10 to like 50 Pikmin to carry over all kinds of terrain that you've had to spend all this time, put in all this effort to prepare the path and kill the enemies that respawn every day just to get them to be able to walk back safely. And now you're halfway there and it's like 3, 2, 1. I got to call them all back and go.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah. Well, and it's
It's
and
intense.
it's devastating. So I guess spoiler alert, my first ending
Yeah.
I got was not like the ideal ending. I didn't get all 30 parts. I got like 27 or something. I missed out on a few.
Okay.
And in that ending, you still survive. Your um, ship is able to, the dolphin is able to fly off the planet, but it hurt. It hurt because I'm like, no,
Mm.
I'm not terrible at games, but I felt pretty bad because my number one thing that kept on getting me was I would go into these battles and lose so many Pikmin in the battle. I just
So
mismanaged my
many.
army. And so then it came time to pick up the item at the end of the battle. I didn't have enough Pikmin, so I had to go all the way back to the start
All
of
the
the
way
level,
back.
or worse yet, I had to refarm Pikmin, which takes forever. So I think it's interesting that like it's both a gameplay mechanic, but it's also like a commentary on like the cost of war. It's awesome.
Yeah. It's also like a psychological and an emotional test of metal. Like how strong are you psychologically and emotionally?
The first time you see your Pikmin drown.
Oh my god. And not just see them, but hear
Hear
them
the sound.
drowning. Their little voices as they're splashing and screaming slash crying.
Yeah.
It's pretty awful because you get weirdly attached to them right away.
Yeah.
They're just a really good character design. They're adorable. They have just a friendly look to them.
Hmm.
And I mean, anything that follows you around like that, it's like, I would be very sad if I had a bunch of baby ducklings also, and they got somehow slaughtered by weird creatures.
Yeah.
That's what it's like.
Yeah.
I did not finish this one this time, and I think I'm going to need to be given another bit of forgiveness. I did do all the first 4 areas, but I didn't get to that final trial with the final boss. But, I don't know that I was really ready to anyway.
Well,
I don't know if I could have handled it in my
was
current
not.
state.
Well, because I didn't get because I didn't get all the parts, I didn't actually end up going there. Because that's where the
Oh, is
very
that
last
what?
part, it's like an extra bonus. You can beat the game without ever going there. And
I
so
see.
because I didn't, once you gather, I think it's 29 parts, then you go to that final boss. So I never even fought him. I have no idea.
Just for the last one.
Yeah, I like went and looked at it to just figure out like what even is this? What am I missing? I saw that I had, because I started playing this game. I recently moved across the country, and before I moved, I started playing it, and then I had to take like a 2-month break, and then picked it up again, and had forgotten like all these commands you can do for your Pikmin. And it's really interesting because it requires you to understand. It will like push all of the, and this is what Nintendo does best, right? It pushes all of the gameplay mechanics to their furthest possible limit, right? And you see this with all their other franchises.
That it's been teaching you the whole way
Mm-hmm.
along the way.
Yeah. And so because I stepped away and had forgotten just 1 or 2 mechanics, 1 or 2 things about how the game works, there were a few parts that there was just no way without using a guide that I would have ever gotten those. And so I didn't, because I was trying to have a very raw experience with Pikmin, and their lives were lost.
Yeah. Yeah. So many lives were lost. I did the retro pre-play video, and I was kind of embarrassed at how I was performing, but I just let it go. I was like, well, I guess this is what it is. Sorry, I'm bad at games, guys.
Yeah.
But I'm losing tons of Pikmin here.
Yeah.
But you mentioned the different mechanics. Maybe we should talk about that in a little bit more depth because it's interesting. It's got very particular controls.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to talk about some of the things maybe that you forgot and some of the things that you remembered there at the end?
Well, I think that just for starters, when you first start playing Pikmin, it is jarring. The new ones are not as jarring. The closer you get to the most recent release, Pikmin 4, it's much more, like this is a modern game. But especially this first one and the second one as well, just the way that the camera works and the way that your character works, it felt very weird to me. But I feel like that's part of the idea of Pikmin, is that you're on an alien planet. You're somewhere that is new for you. So having it be a little bit weird, the way that the camera works, and you zoomed way out or zoomed way in, and, managing all these little Pikmin, it's meant to be a little cumbersome at times. That's part of the gameplay. But the mechanics of, I mentioned that it's part survival horror, and that you have to manage like in any good survival horror game, you're going to have, limited resources that you have to manage. How much ammo do I have? And your Pikmin are essentially your ammo, right? And
that's true.
How smart you are about using those will determine your ability to survive. And I've always been one wherein, if there's a zombie in a game, I'm going to unload everything I have on that zombie. And so that, that's not going to work in Pikmin. So kind of resource management was one of the big takeaways I had of something that this game was trying to drive home for me.
Yeah, I could use a real sit down strategy session with a true Pikmin expert because my strategy and what I thought worked better than other attempts was to take literally as many Pikmin as I possibly could and kind of try to drown the enemy with
Yeah.
them like Zergling Rush. But in some cases, I would get half of them killed almost instantly. And I was like, oops, that's not the way it goes. Some of the enemies just, they had particular moves that were just so incredibly effective against my little mob of creatures.
Yeah.
And it was just so disappointing to see. I like that they include the option to restart from your last save if you're like, well, that was a failure.
Yeah.
So I think if you're liberal with admitting that you messed up and just saying, I got to try that again,
Mm-hmm.
it might be easier as far as like not doing the run of the whole game, just saying, okay, this day was a wash, or like, oh, okay, I used this day to figure out where things are and how I need to approach this, which I didn't do during this play, but I just thought of it now. And I think it would have helped me a lot because there are so many times, especially when you get to a new area and you have this map and you don't really know what the map means fully. Like you can see some of the structures, but you don't really have a full lay of the land until you literally walk over there and look at it with your eyes.
Yeah.
And then you can say, oh, okay, I'm going to need to take some blue Pikmin who don't drown like the other color Pikmin. And they have to go over here where they can make this bridge. And then I can bring my yellow Pikmin to pick up these bombs because they're the only ones who can do that. And bomb this stone wall that's only damageable by these little bombs that only the yellow Pikmin can bomb.
Yeah.
And then go over here. And I mean, are the red Pikmin immune to fire? Is that a real thing?
And that's
They
not
are.
something that you are
Yeah.
told. You get to a point in the
Like
game.
ever.
Yeah. I think it's the Forest's Navel is the name of the level, and there's these guys that will spit out they're flamethrowers basically. And I took all my Pikmin and I was using a bunch of blue Pikmin to get around the water.
Oh,
And
no.
I'm like, okay, I'm going to fight these guys. And then all of a sudden their heads catch on fire. They start burning. And I'm like, oh my
God,
gosh.
so
And so
horrible.
I bring the red Pikmin because those are like my disposable soldiers, basically. They don't do anything special. And then I discovered that they do something special. They're immune to fire.
Yeah.
But the game doesn't tell you that. You have to absorb that cost of how many people are you going to lose before you figure this out.
Yeah. Or restart the day. Go back to your last save. Use that time. So you're really spending your time in real life as opposed to your time in the game.
Yeah.
Say, okay, I figured it out. Start over.
Yeah.
I feel like for some reason, I'm probably wrong. It's probably just my imagination. I always feel like the red Pikmin are like a little bit stronger or a little bit more effective at doing the tasks. Like throughout the levels, there are things that the Pikmin can do, like beat up on these walls that once you put them on it for a little while, the walls will come tumbling down.
Yeah.
Or build a bridge out from the edge of a piece of land, or extend like a stick that they climb up, whatever it is. Because it's worth noting that the planet you're on, that Olimar describes in his captain's logs, which I love the way the story is told, by the way. It's like after each time, there's a little note from Olimar and his discoveries and stuff. Well, it's a planet with toxic oxygen. And then you see that it's like Earth.
Yeah.
Like there's stuff from Earth there, like little boxes or whatever. So it's super interesting.
It is interesting to see like that it is Earth, and you see that more, I think, in later games with some of the items that are on the ground. Like I've even seen in the promotional material for Pikmin 4, like them carrying a Game Boy Advance SP, like very on the nose, like fun elements to that. So I think, I mean, this is maybe going a little bit into the aesthetics of the game, but while you're, I think if you were just to hear, some of the elements of this game, you'd be like, wow, this is a horrifying, horrible, scary game. But it also has like a cozy element to it. And I think a lot of that is just because of the aesthetic, the garden. It really feels like you're looking in through a microscope almost at this little scene playing
Yeah.
out in someone's backyard.
Yeah. Which makes a lot of sense because Miyamoto described. Time out. Let me just take a drink.
You're good, man. Take a sip.
I knew this was going to happen. I got to go get some more because I already drank the whole cup. When Miyamoto was describing how he came up with Super Mario Brothers, it had to do a lot with him exploring his own surroundings as a kid and his garden and stuff like that. So that's a lot like Pikmin. And I also just remembered what my train of thought was before. It was that I felt like the red Pikmin did all those tasks around the world a little bit faster than the other Pikmin. But I don't know if that was just my imagination. Did you get that vibe that like the red Pikmin worked a little harder?
It very well could be. I wonder if for me, it was just I had so many of them. I felt like I always had way more red Pikmin, and so I was willing to use them. But they can also drink like this dew on the ground, and that gives them like a little flower on their head. When they have the flower, they run faster, they're stronger, they work better. So I'm not sure. Yeah. Maybe the red Pikmin have more of that. It could be that they're just stronger. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, maybe their main power is just abundance. Like that's their power. Abundance and resistance to fire.
Yeah.
So you were mentioning the camera a little earlier, and I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the controls more specifically, but the camera was something that stood out to me as being terrible.
Yeah.
The camera was pretty frustrating, and I found myself constantly missing when I was trying to throw my Pikmin because of the perspective at the time.
Uh-huh.
Like I would think, okay, Olimar looks like he's lined up, and you have the little reticle on the ground to help you line up, but that doesn't help you when the thing you're trying to throw at is flying so much, or is just kind of off axis in a weird way. And I missed all the time. And I would have loved. I have a lot of complaints about this game. I found myself having tons of complaints as I was playing, even though I kind of enjoy the game, but I was just, so many things felt wrong to me. Yeah. And one of them would have been, just use the C stick for the camera. Like, why do I have to press the L button to focus where Olimar is looking? Because that means that whenever I want to change the camera, first, I have to move him with my left stick, which interrupts what I'm trying to do with him. So, like I'm running to the right. Oh, suddenly I want to turn to the left so that I could point the camera that way. And then press the L button to focus over there. Why not just let the C stick do it? And then whatever the L button did, just let me, or whatever the C stick does. It moves the C stick in the game, lets you direct your entire mob of Pikmin that you're currently controlling in 360 degrees around Olimar. Just let me toggle that with the L button. Like I'll hold the L button and use the C stick to move them.
Yeah.
But let me just use the C stick by itself to do the camera.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I think that the GameCube is still a time where Nintendo shied away from twin stick controls. I mean, the C stick is just a little nubbin. And really until the Wii U, and even you could argue the Switch, is the first true twin stick Nintendo console when you think about it. Which is wild, absolutely wild. But they have like this aversion. You see that with a lot of other games too. At the time, they're not willing to make the C stick really anything besides like an extra menu or something to toggle through things. I will say, having played it on the Switch, that is fixed. I don't know if you played it on the Switch or
Ah,
not, but
thank you. That's
this,
a spoiler worth having.
yeah, it is on the Switch. That is fixed because a lot of people who play Pikmin, like diehard Pikmin fans, will swear that the Wii version is actually the way to play it. Because with the Wii version, you use the Wii pointer to control where you're throwing your Pikmin. And so you have perfect accuracy because it's just a pointer on the screen. Like, they redid the controls for the Wii version. And so a lot of people will prefer that version over the original releases on the GameCube. And then the Wii U also did that. And now the Switch has multiple gameplay options for all 4 games that are released on it. So there are definitely better ways to play it in 2024 now, luckily.
That's very cool. But at the same time, do you know what the C in C-Stick stands for?
ABC, I don't know.
Camera. The C buttons on the Nintendo 64 were the camera buttons.
Oh, that makes sense, yeah.
And then they just carried that over to the C-Stick.
I'm shocked that that is camera because I can think of so many games that would have benefited from using that as a camera that did not. and it made it so that when they transitioned to the Wii, which did not have twin sticks, they didn't miss a beat because all their games were built around not having twin sticks anyways. So just wild to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like on the Nintendo 64, it was very clear that those were for the camera. It was definitely established with Super Mario 64 that, we're in 3D now. All of a sudden, we need a way to control the camera.
Yeah. But when I think about it, besides, those, legacy 3D platformers, your Mario, Banjo, like other games, Zelda was like, yeah, we'll use these for items. Like we don't need to control the camera that way. We'll find other ways.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that was the camera controls. What other controls were kind of unique about this game? You could do a few other things to kind of manage your Pikmin.
Yeah, I think that. Well, yeah, I mean, there's the camera that all the zooming of the camera was another thing for me as well. But that kind of hit home to me that we were looking through a microscope and kind of zooming in on things. But as far as controlling the Pikmin, I mean, the AI for these Pikmin definitely was not quite there necessarily. And learning how to, manipulate them. So like these Pikmin, they'll build a bridge for you. You'll throw them at the bridge. They'll knock a bridge down. And then you need them to walk over it so they don't drown. Well, on any given time, at least 3 or 4 of them are going to run right into the water following you and drown horribly before you can get across that bridge. So it was interesting to just kind of see, how you control the Pikmin is a big part of the game. And, are you going to go for speed or are you going to go for the performance of, not having as many of your soldiers die in battle?
Yeah, because they follow you in just a wide mob.
Mm-hmm.
You can't line them up. So they'll just fall, they'll get hung up. Sometimes they even seem to trip over their own feet.
Yeah.
Like, I've seen them just fall. I'm like, what? Are you kidding?
Yeah. Or
sometimes they don't respond to you when you call them.
Yeah. Well, you'll be going somewhere you need to go. You have like 40 Pikmin picked out to like carry something for you. And then like 3 of them just stop and start digging for honeydew or something. It's like, guys, we've got a job.
Yeah, they've got like ADD.
Yeah, legitimately. It's kind of like being a parent, honestly. Like that, it felt very familiar. It was like just same thing every day with kids.
Yeah, they've got their own agenda, and it changes like right in the middle of doing another task.
Yeah.
How many times you have to recall them in the middle of things was almost unbelievable.
Yeah. But there was a moment, I picked up on a moment in that middle level in the naval, and it was kind of a sweet moment where there's this bug that the Pikmin captured on their own. They were just there following me, and then they stopped and fought this bug on their own. And then they started carrying the bug. I'm like, oh, they're going to carry it back to, harvest it for more Pikmin. And lo and behold, the bug had a ship part in it. I forget what part it was, but it like spits it out, and they found it on their own. It was like this kind of
Oh, wow.
semi-scripted event, I guess. But I was like, I think that, I don't know, maybe I read too deeply into these things, but I think that Miyamoto's trying to tell us something with the Pikmin, and that we're supposed to learn some sort of deeper lesson.
Oh, like don't try too hard to micromanage.
Yeah, I don't know, something like that.
Let people do what they'll do, and maybe they'll do a good job.
Yeah. Well, because then, so I went back just to see what's the difference between the ending I got, where I survived, I didn't die. But what happens if you get all 30 parts? And if you get all 30 parts, Olimar flies away, ship's completed, and there's more Pikmin there. And, when the way that I finished it, there's just 3 Pikmin waving, and then they just kind of are like, they're just left behind. And as it gets dark, so it's implied that they don't make it. Whereas in the ending, when you get all the parts, the Pikmin start fighting. Those animals, those frog guys, I forget their names, they come and the Pikmin start tackling them, and they start fighting them on their own. So the implication is that, you've done a good job. You've shown them you've been a good commander. So now they can fight on their own and, start repopulating the planet. So I kind of like that message of, you're, even though it's been hard, even though they've sacrificed so much to help you survive, that you've done something for them, and you've been that leader that they needed. So I don't know. Maybe that's the feel good message of Pikmin.
That's incredible.
Man, that's why I say I got to play this game again. Just one, I've got to get to that final boss and actually do it. But I feel like there's a lot to unpack here, actually. And, I don't know how deep you want to go into this, but I think it is actually unfortunate that the other Pikmin games, it's not unfortunate. I'll use different wording. It's interesting that every Pikmin game is very different. That's the one thing that I took away from my brief peruse of the other games, is just, Pikmin 1 is the only one with a strict time limit, that no matter what you do, that day is going to end, and Olimar is going to die on that planet if you don't save him. Pikmin 2 is much more of like let's go find as much treasure as we can and enter these, generative dungeons, basically. And there is no time limit in the dungeons.
Oh, yeah.
And Pikmin 3 is, okay, you're going to get hungry, you're going to starve, but it's really easy to get, you just need to manage how much food you have, and then you can take as long as you want. And then Pikmin 4, at least from what I've experienced, seems like it's more like a Pikmin 2, like get as much treasure as you want. You can even go out at night in Pikmin 4. So there's not necessarily the same urgent time limit. And so I like that each game has its own objective, but I do feel like something is lost by not having the stress of, if I don't make it through this, Olimar's never going to see his family again.
Yeah, he mentions his son numerous times.
Yeah.
And that always hits really hard.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think the part of me that likes that challenge, that a Metroidvania or a Souls game, or that stress that you feel sometimes of, I got to do this thing right now or else it's not going to work. That's here in Pikmin, and I kind of enjoy that.
Yeah. Wow, that's such an interesting takeaway from the series, having experienced it, a little bit of it. Because I only played the first 2, and I remember kind of what you're saying about the second one, but now I'm really interested to see how those last 2 feel. That's so interesting.
Yeah.
It's almost like the first one is the quote-unquote hardcore version of it, and then it kind of tries to appeal to more people by not putting those kinds of heavy restrictions or consequences on the player.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's the number one thing I hear. The complaint some people have of Pikmin 1 is, it's too stressful, the time limit. For me, I kind of like that in the game. It makes it more impactful and it gives me a greater goal. I don't know if I'll be as interested in Pikmin 2 when I get around to playing that, just because it feels more like just get the treasure, bucko, go dive.
Yeah.
But I could see how some people who want more of a cozy, chill experience would really like that. So no shade.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, games are different. People are different.
Yeah.
Experiences are different. So, I mean, that we talked more there about like the structure of the game itself, the design of the game, the whole game. How do you feel about the individual levels, like the design and structure of the 3D spaces you're navigating with your Pikmin?
So I felt like this was a strong point, honestly. I thought that the
Mm,
fact that you could choose where you went, explore the level, I liked that. And I'm gonna try not to mention Dark Souls much more, but my favorite thing ever is the world of Dark Souls 1, how interconnected it is and it loops back on
mm,
itself. This is nowhere near, the same level of just satisfaction I get from that. But I could feel at moments like, oh, and then I loop around here and then they can carry the thing there. Like that puzzle, the puzzle is the
yeah.
world. The level design is the puzzle. And it's very engaging the way that they lay things out and figuring out how to get the Pikmin up on this ledge to then go around with your blue Pikmin in the water. So then you can have more Pikmin in the boss battle on the other side, and so I did like
Mm-hmm.
that. I found that the last area with the distant spring, I found that to be very
Lots
tedious
of
because there were
water all over.
so many enemies. And I was
Mm-hmm.
losing so many. That was it got frustrating for me towards the end, but maybe that's just my lizard brain.
Particularly that frog that like jumps up and lands down and then jumps up and
Oh yes,
lands the yellow frog. Those are the worst.
yeah.
I don't really know what to do with them, to be honest.
No, it's
Like you
hard.
throw a bunch at them and then call them away and then throw them back and then call them away. I went up to him and punched him with Olimar a few times even.
Oh,
Couldn't stand that enemy. But I like that level overall, its design, because it had a few like interesting, tricky bits. I got a little frustrated with the Forest Naval
yeah.
because of the roundabout nature of it and
Hmm.
having to do a lot of that switching off between Pikmin types. And when you do that, each one is at risk because of some environmental element or an enemy. Like there's the fire enemies, so
Hmm.
your red Pikmin can get by here, but your other two can't. And then over here, there's tons of water, but you have to get your yellow Pikmin through here with the bombs that they drop if you release them and then try to call them back. So I kind of skipped that one. I was like, I'm moving on. I
Yeah.
got maybe one or two, and I was like, I gotta go. I gotta check out the next level.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna go back to it for sure. But yeah, I like the level design overall, even though I'm kind of complaining about it. I think it's smart. Like it makes you have to think, and sometimes you look at some set of environmental facets and you're like, what do I even have to do here? And you're like, oh, wait, if I put them up there, maybe I have to throw them up there and then walk around by myself and then call them from the other side. There's one thing that I really like where you throw them up on top of a ledge
Mm.
and then control them from below. And they're limited by a little wall, so you can walk along the lower ledge, but they're walking along the upper ledge. I thought that was cool. And there's a
Yeah.
lot of interesting stuff like that.
No, absolutely.
All right, so that's a lot. I mean, we've got graphics and sound. What's your take on that? Those two elements of the game.
I think that this was meant to be the GameCube's tour de force, kind of. They're showing off. Look how many bits our console is. Look how clean these graphics are. And honestly, I think that it does
Yeah.
that really well. When you look at anything else from 2001 that's going for a somewhat realistic, I mean, the character models aren't realistic, but the environments are going for a sort of photorealism that was, you know, relatively common during that generation, going for more and more realistic looks. I think it's hard to find a game that does that better than this one, while still maintaining very cartoony characters in that somewhat photorealistic world.
Yeah. I think the GameCube in general just has kind of a special look about it.
Yeah.
Something about some of the ways that it handles rendering, particularly with water and textures. Like, they put a lot of water on this codenamed Dolphin console.
Yeah.
Which I don't think was, a mistake, a coincidence.
Mm-hmm.
And in this one, the water looks great. And Sunshine, the water looks great. A lot of that stuff. And I just think everything looks great on the GameCube still.
Yeah.
And like you said, the textures, the lush, the nature stuff, really good. Really good. Beautiful game.
Well, and playing it in widescreen on the Switch, I mean, they really, it's the same game. They've updated the controls. They've cleaned up some of the textures, but they haven't like overhauled it or anything. And honestly, like visually, it was great. Like I can definitely tell, if you were to show me a screenshot of the newer games, I'd know, but I don't need that. Like it looks great still today. And, I can't recommend the Switch port enough for anybody who wants to play it. Like it's a really, really good way to play both 1 and 2. And it's $40. So a little more reasonable than if it were to be a full priced thing for both those games.
Yeah. Yeah, that's $40 for 2 games.
Yeah.
So pretty good. And then we already mentioned briefly the music.
Yeah.
What would be your more extended take on the sound overall in this game?
So I think that I think when we're talking about sound, there's soundtrack and then there's overall sound design. And I think that Pikmin excels in both of these areas. But
Absolutely.
It also has, for me at least, the soundtracks of the last 2 areas, the Forest Navel and the Distant Spring, were not it for me. Because you have these super great, I mean, I love like the Forest of Hope, that little na 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 na.
Yeah.
Oh, so good, so calming. And there's great tunes at the landing site. When you open it up, the opening menu is great. There's some really good little sounds, the music that plays when you're getting to your spaceship. But then they have kind of some weird, more abstract stuff going on. And that might be, it's fitting. Okay, it's very fitting for the area. But I think because I don't like those areas as much as the first areas, because the soundtrack is matching that, I don't like the soundtrack as much for those. But I mean, as far as,
Yeah. And then we already talked about the sound design, like the voices of the Pikmin.
Their screams.
The sounds of the enemies. Yeah.
Everything in the game sounds like it should, basically. And it adds, just the fact that there are so many sounds adds to this feeling that you're in like this big jungle, basically.
Yeah. I was thinking there's depth of texture to the soundscape because of all these different sounds.
That's a more eloquent way of saying it for sure.
I sound so elegant, don't I?
You're super elegant.
To anyone who hasn't noticed, I've been coughing this entire time terribly, and I've probably cut the majority of it out. I'm fighting here. But we're coming to the end now. Yeah. All right, so at the end of every episode, we decide whether the game is worth replaying or playing for the first time in 2024, whatever year it is, and beyond. So why don't you give us your final thoughts and then let us know if it is worth replaying. That makes it a smash. And if it's not, well, then it's more of a brick. So what do you say, Mason?
So for when it comes to Pikmin 1, just the first one, if you have any interest in playing through the series, I think this is where you should start. Having experimented with the other games and seen kind of what they do, this is the starting point, and this is what Pikmin is in its purest form. And so for that alone, I'd say it's a smash. But then I just think about what I've gotten out of it, being able to play it, and what it has to offer versus other Pikmin games or other, Nintendo franchises. And I think it's worth it, playing it in 2024. When you have all 4 Pikmin games available on the Switch, I think it's a no-brainer. But I'd say if you look at it like dating, if you get to the second date and you're not loving it, maybe pass. So, I would say Smash, but then also like, if it might not be for everybody, and it's definitely got some jank. So a soft Smash for me.
A soft Smash related to dating. Got it. Okay. So I had lots of complaints playing this game, like tons.
Yeah.
I kept just feeling like I was complaining to myself while playing. But I think it's a smash. I think this game is worth playing. Obviously I haven't played 3 and 4. I said that. I can't quite remember 2 as clearly, except that I thought it was more Pikmin and good. But now that you mentioned that it doesn't have a timer, that sounds familiar to me. But I think Pikmin's absolutely worth playing. It's just such a different sort of game that still hasn't really been replicated. I can't even think of other games that do what this game does, except maybe a Little King Story on the Wii, and like, what was that other one? The Wonderful 101 might have been kind of like this. Can you think of other games that are like this at all?
Honestly, when you ask like what are the other games like Pikmin, I think Pikmin 2, Pikmin 3, Pikmin 4. and the only reason I say a soft smash is because I feel like those games all offer very different experiences. So if you play Pikmin 1 and you have complaints and you have things that you don't love about it, play Pikmin 2. A lot of people, Pikmin 2 is their favorite game. And if you don't like Pikmin 2, try Pikmin 3 because it does some things really differently. And if you don't like Pikmin 3, Pikmin 4 is the best-selling Pikmin game and has made, so I feel like there's a lot of Pikmin
for everybody.
Exactly. And so I think that if this specific one doesn't speak to you, but you see things that you like, I haven't played them all, but at least from what I've seen and what I've heard and what I have played of those games, there's a Pikmin for everybody, all shapes and sizes.
Nice. So even if this one doesn't strike your fancy, at least you've learned that by sampling it.
Yep.
And you can try.
And I would assume it would be hard to come back and play Pikmin 1 if you're starting with Pikmin 4. Right?
So you have
there's
to play
things about
Pikmin
this
1
one
first.
I mean, I never want to say you have to, but it feels like you should.
Mason is saying you have to play Pikmin 1 first.
Yeah, if you don't, I will come find you.
And hit you with a Game Boy.
With an original Game Boy DMG. Those things are bricks.
Yeah, they cannot be harmed even by grenades or something like that. Did you ever see that one Game Boy that was like at war or something? Oh my, and still worked?
Yeah.
Wow.
They're pretty awesome.
Okay, so anyway, that makes Pikmin a smash. And it is worth revisiting in 2024 and beyond, despite my numerous complaints. So, thanks everybody for listening and playing along with us. Tell your friends about the show. It's the best way to share the show. Just say, hey, go listen to this show, Smashing Bricks. And thanks, Mason, for coming along and playing the game and dealing with this very rough recording we've had thanks to my coughing fits. You want to tell people where to go find you? Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
You can find me on Instagram is where I'm most active, at Game Boys in the Wild. I try to stay up with DMs, and I love talking about retro stuff. So if you want to come say hi, love to talk Pikmin or Game Boys or anything else.
Very cool. Yeah, so check him out over there, and check us out wherever you're listening to us. And if you haven't done so yet, go to Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcasting platform and leave us a generous and helpful 5-star rating and review. It's totally free. If you want to go above and beyond that and support the show monetarily while getting some fun perks, head over to patreon.smashingbricks.com and become a patron for as little as $1 a month. All patrons get early access to monthly retro pre-play videos. The Fireflower tier allows you to choose games that may be played on an upcoming Power Up episode. The Tanuki tier will get you exclusive full-length bonus round episodes at the end of every month, as well as ongoing recognition on the show. And the Starman tier will even get you a guest spot on the show with me as my guest. As always, I'd like to thank Tanuki level supporter Ms. Muso. Thanks, Ms. Muso. And one other way to help us out is to do all your regular Amazon shopping via amazon.smashingbricks.com. It links directly to Amazon using my affiliate code, and all the shopping you do after going there will earn the show a little kickback while costing you absolutely nothing more than it otherwise would. We also have a Discord server for fans, which is a free text, voice, and video chat community where you can leave commentary about upcoming and past games and talk about just about anything with your fellow brick smashers. And links to everything mentioned, plus Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch can be found in the episode description and at our Linktree, which is at links.smashingbricks.com. As for next episode, I literally don't know yet. I will have a mystery guest for a mystery game that I will reveal shortly on Instagram and Facebook. So keep an eye on that, and then whatever that game is, get your hands on a copy, play along, send in your thoughts, and join us next time on Smashing Bricks. That wraps it up for today. I'm still Eddie Inzauto. That has been Mason from Game Boys in the Wild. And until next time, may the nostalgia be with you. Okay, give me a second to pause here so I can cut this out. I'm like breathing heavy over. I'm sweating. It's really rough. I'm getting through this.
Hey, you're good.
We're doing it, man.
You're good, man. Roughing it.
I'm fighting so hard over here. Cool. Okay. I just spilled honey on myself too, so I'm doing great. Jeez. God, I gotta take this shirt off because it got honey on me. Okay, and that's the worst. Okay. I'm back.